Hello, everybody, and
That was quite drastically cut short.
welcome to a very brief introduction to the Wonder of Stuff, episode 20. Oh God, what are we on? 28, I think we're on. Yeah, I don't know what happened. You see, even digital things have problems. Yeah, so it's completely confused. Welcome to episode 28 of the Wonder of Stuff Vodcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts and Air every weekend, Sunday night again to this week. This is the place you'll find news, information, commentary on science, engineering and technology from the past week and beyond, and anything else that interests us from our tiny little human brains. As ever, my name is John Gardner, and to help us through this journey to knowledge, let me introduce my colleagues, Richard Smith and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Jolly good. Well, yes. Hopefully, we'll not have any more further gremlins this evening, and we're going to kick off straight away with a topic from Richard, and it's about gastrophysics. Do tell us more.
Have either of you heard of this concept of gastrophysics?
Is this what Heston does?
Yeah, so you've got molecular gastronomy, which is the thing that all the chefs seem to do, which is the discipline of food science, basically, where you investigate the physical and chemical transformations and look at the ingredients in cooking and blah blah blah. This is the scientific approach to that broader, like it's a more narrow category of the same thing. This was it's got some history though. It was coined by an experimental psychologist at Oxford called Charles Spence. And basically the disciplines. Well, I'll tell you the bit that's probably going to put you off at first of all. It talks about flavors rather than tastes.
Flaves.
Yeah, which must have turned me off when I read that. But the reason that it talks about flavors rather than tastes is because taste, when you look at this scientifically, taste is only a small part of the overall effect, which I'll get into that. But basically, the disciplines are psychology, neuroscience, sensory sciences, marketing, behavioral economics, and design. So it's got lots of nice aspects to it. So it's got the potential to be something very interesting. I'll run through some examples. So one that's instinctively very obvious that you'll have seen almost all restaurants have now cottoned onto, decent restaurants have cottoned onto, which is if you messily plate your food to the consumer, it doesn't taste as good as if it's neatly artistically arranged. So if you get people explicitly to rate how it tasted, nothing else, not how it was presented, just how it tasted, they will obviously rate it much higher for presentation, but they will also rate it higher for taste. So everyone knows about that bit. And
but that's just the old adage of you eat with your eyes, isn't it? It's that.
Yeah.
It will obviously affect it because if something's more pleasing to look at, it's like it affects other things. Yeah. Okay. So the next bit.
And it's our leading sense, so you'd expect that it will override other senses. You know, if something looks good, then therefore it will override taste, and because we're so orientated by what we see through our eyes. But this goes all the way back to the 30s. So the 7-Up marketers knew about this in the 30s. They knew the more yellow they put on the can, the more citrus the drink actually tastes. So, you know, people will be unconsciously influenced by things like this. Roundness, so whether it's the product or the logo, the more round it is, the sweeter it tastes. The more pointy it is, the more bitter it tastes. So this really does work universally as well. It's not to do with cultural background, and it's just something about, I guess it's evolution at a level. Something about our psychology that roundness gives us that impression that it's sweeter. But wine, I don't know if we talked about this on the show or whether it was just a conversation.
Wine
that we had. Now, is that red wine you're drinking there?
Funny enough, it is. It is very nice Montepulciano di Abruzzo, actually.
Now, are you sure?
Fairly sure.
Well, because the reason I'm bringing up wine, well, there's a few things to wine. I know I've had this conversation with one of you before. I'm not sure if it was on the show or not, but you know, the whole thing about wine connoisseurs and which wines are better and stuff is not really a science when that's been looked at. and labels have been switched in, wine tasting competitions where world-renowned judges and stuff, it doesn't really hold out to any sort of scientific scrutiny, though it's kind of like an art rather than it's not really scientific what they do. Obviously, wines have different flavours, and some people prefer these ones to prefer these ones, but there's nothing about a different vineyard making a superior wine it doesn't really bear out. And if you switch the labels around, the judges are fooled just as easily. But this psychologist Charles Spence, he's done one recently where he's switched judges. Because I did write some notes on that.
Well, I mean, just for the record, I never buy a wine on the label. I'll start off with something that I know that I like. I've had once and I'll make a note of it, and then I'll try other ones around that.
I go by whichever one's on offer.
Well, it's good.
I thought you might say that.
But although if you pay more for wine, you'll think it's more delicious. So if you want to taste more delicious, maybe it's worth spending it just to trick yourself. I'm not sure how well that works if you're aware of the trick, but a lot of cognitive bias still works. Just placebo works just as well if you're aware of the placebo. So
I found that yes, there's no, you can't just say if I buy a £20 wine it'll taste 20 times as gorgeous as a £1 wine. That doesn't work. But I think there's a difference, for me anyway, there is a difference in taste, flavour, enjoyment if I go from a £3 wine to a £6 wine. I can't tell the difference between a £3 wine and a between a £6 wine and a £12 wine, but I can between like a 3 and a 6. Yeah.
I think it's a bit like the cognitive dissonance thing which I've talked about before. I think if you make a decision and you invest money in something, your cognitive bias is to reduce the dissonance of did I make the right decision there by changing reality rather than looking at it and admitting, no, I've spent £100 when I could have spent £5. This £100 bottle of wine is no better. Most people will just change reality so that the £100 bottle of wine is better. They'll just convince themselves, right, well, I've spent £100. Unconsciously this is. But, I've spent £100 now. I'm just going to find something about this wine that makes it somewhat worth it. So maybe not 10 times or 50 times better, but somewhat better because they've spent the money. But on experts, he actually tricked wine experts, a panel of 54 world-leading wine experts, reviewing a white wine with red food colouring, and they reviewed it as a red wine without knowing they were reviewing a white wine. So they were using terms such as honey, lemon, straw for the white, and chicory, coal, prune, chocolate, tobacco, which are terms used for reds. So they just switched the terms, but they were drinking the same wine. It was just
this is interesting as well, is because by convention, white wines are normally served chilled and red wines are normally served sort of at room temperature. So if you serve a white wine that is coloured with red food colouring at room temperature, I don't know, I've never done it, so perhaps it would taste...
It wouldn't become a red wine, though, not to a...
No, it wouldn't, but perhaps... Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of the temperature rates into it as well. I
mean, presumably he presumably normalised for all of that as well. I'm guessing he made red wine, otherwise it wouldn't have fooled the Jew. They would have said, "Oh, how outrageous! You can't serve this at cold when it's red wine." So presumably he did that as well. But the point is that all you can say about wine tasting in that case is that it's subjective. There's no objective measure. If you suddenly switch all the terms that you would have used for white to red, just because of the addition of food colouring, you've been totally tricked.
So does this gastrophysics cover sound as well?
Yeah, it does. I didn't actually manage to get an example of sound, but
I've seen one before. There's one with crisps, where basically they had some crisps which were actually sort of like stale, but they played the sound of crunching through headphones,
and they made them think.
People said, yeah, these ones, they're fresh.
Yeah.
Because the sound makes you think that it's fresh.
Yeah.
And I think they were talking about the fact that, like, you know, people like McDonald's have used that. They use crisp lettuce because it doesn't necessarily have to be fresh, but it feels fresh.
Right.
Because you hear it crunching.
Yeah.
Whereas it might not be as fresh as something that wasn't crunchy, but
and therefore you rate it as tastier, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, there is an example. I was saying I hadn't come across one, but there was one. Classical music. If you play classical music in a restaurant, people will pick more expensive menu options. So it puts them in a mood, in a frame of mind of, you know, I'm more of a discerning person tonight. I'm going to pick something more expensive. And
some of these things though are what advertisers have known about for years.
Yeah.
So things like that are just like classic. All right, we've got scenario A, then we must do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And that, you know, it's
a similar thing, basically. Yeah. It's just going into the science of food in particular and seeing how the psychology affects people. Yeah. Loud music increases soft drink consumption. They did one where they had people eating popcorn during 2 movies. So people who viewed Solaris, the film Solaris, which is kind of like a melancholy sci-fi movie for those who haven't seen it, they ate 55% more popcorn than those who watched My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which is kind of like a upbeat rom-com type of movie. So that, you know, and it was large number study as well. Because red plates. If you want to reduce your food intake, you use a red plate.
Yeah, you eat less. Yeah, I've seen that before. I don't know what's the thing behind that. Then is it because
they don't know? They think that it's to do with there being less contrast between the food and the plate.
Right. Yeah.
And blue lighting as well. If you use blue lighting, it discourages overeating. The best thing you can do if you want to reduce your eating is to eat alone, because you'll eat 35% more with one other person on average. You'll eat 75% more with 3 others. You'll eat twice as much if there are 7 or more diners.
Well, I can concur, because before I met Rianne, I just didn't eat. I didn't.
You must have.
Oh yeah, but I ate very little stuff. You know, not much. And now, mind you, it might be something to do with because my gorgeous wife is in fact a bloody good cook.
I was going to say, is that because you don't?
And I wasn't a great cook. I tried. Is the best I can say.
Well, if you what you should be doing is serving food under red light then, because apparently that makes stuff taste better and sweeter and nicer.
I'm out to Debenhams tomorrow to purchase red plates and red light bulbs.
Wine seemingly tastes 50% sweeter when consumed under red light.
I don't try it here and now because I don't have those red conditions, unfortunately.
That's about it for the examples. The only other ones are a bowl of mixed M&Ms will go down quicker than a bowl of just one colour, so people prefer variety. If you're decisive in a restaurant, so if you're the person who picks first and decisively, you will enjoy your food more than the person who picks second. And also the person who follows will often instinctively dismiss what the first person's chosen and then end up ordering something
and wish they'd got that.
They wouldn't ordinarily pick because they didn't want to, like, it's unconscious, but they're not picking the same thing as someone else has picked.
See, I think I'm aware of that. I've done that before and deliberately chosen something that wasn't my first choice because someone else has it. Which is just weird. You just think, I don't want to just get, you know, because if you're with like 4 people and everybody chose the same thing and you were the last person to choose, you'd be thinking, well, I've got to choose something else.
I just think it's one of those really fascinating things where it's interesting that you say it deliberately, and you know, it's this whole thing about free will and determinism and all these interesting philosophical arguments. But you know, I'm the same. I've done that and feel as though I've made that decision. But then you find out this is a universal thing that people always do, and then it makes you think, well, I'm just a sheep then. Basically, I'm just, you know, it's true, isn't it? It makes you question all that, where you thought something was deliberate and actually. The numbers will show that this is what everyone will do in that circumstance.
Weird. So are these more chef-driven things or science? Are these scientists looking into this?
I mean, this guy's a psychologist, and he's written a book about it because he wants the public to know. But up until now, it's been more marketers and chefs that have been interested in it.
Yeah.
Obviously, he feels as though he can market. He's just released this book, and that's why the Guardian have written a story about it. But I think there's an appetite, if you like, in the public to learn about this sort of thing. I mean, I've read about it before, going all the way back to when the Italian sauces were having like a war, and there was like two big companies, and one was kind of losing out, and they did in the past, their market research has always been to ask consumers what they wanted. What they found, they did a new novel approach, was to give people taste tests, and they found that what people reported they wanted and what they actually wanted were two totally different things. So that's where the rise of the chunky sauces and stuff came from. Yeah. Nobody had ever said, ever, in all of the surveys that had ever been done by the big companies, that they wanted chunky sauces. However, when they were given them and shown them, they did want them. But nobody would have realised that fact if they hadn't done that experiment. And apparently it's the same with coffee. People will always say that they like a rich, strong roast, and wine likewise. People will more often say they like a full-bodied, rich wine, and actually they don't. The majority of people like a milky, weak coffee, but they just won't say it. They don't realise that they don't like that. And people will form a habit of a lifetime, saying I like thin, authentic Italian sauce, and if they did a taste test, they would find that they probably don't. It's one of those interesting things.
See, in terms of food, I've always been fascinated by chocolate as well. Like different shape chocolate can make chocolate taste completely different, even though it's exactly the same fundamental thing.
Yeah.
You'll buy Dairy Milk has loads of different kinds of chocolate. I mean, I know they have different things in, but if you think of like Easter egg chocolate, for example, to me tastes so much better than a bar of Dairy Milk, even though it's the same thing.
It's not. Don't necessarily assume that.
But even when it is the same thing, you're right. It does taste better.
But the formulation of chocolate for different products is different.
Yeah.
Even if they're the same manufacturer.
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily say that it. I mean, I think what you say in that particular case, you are probably right.
Yeah.
But I know that there was we know the outcry with various things that Cadbury's do, because Cadbury's and other chocolate manufacturers are available, but they sub-license their manufacture of various things to various companies, and you think that you're getting a Cadbury's chocolate, which is, everybody thinks you're getting Dairy Milk on everything, well, you're certainly not.
Right, yeah.
That's true, however, it seems to me that all Easter eggs taste better than all chocolate bars, and I'm someone who eats chocolate every day of my life, but there's something about an Easter egg, and I guess it's that visual input of the egg, or something about the novelty of it, or something about the occasion, or nostalgia to your childhood. I guess it's a bit of everything, but it obviously has an effect that even a crap quality egg I still find better than a good quality chocolate bar. So
Excellent food. I'm hungry. Actually, I have later on. I have some little snippets, because this was going to be one I didn't announce at the start. This was originally going to be sort of like a catch-up show, but it's now sort of like a something borrowed, something old, something new. Nothing. Well, everything's borrowed in this show, usually from very, 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 very intelligent researchers. But it's something old, something new. So we've got Rich and Ross have got some new stories, and I'm going to do a few catch-ups towards the end. And I'm going to go back to my pet subject, which is food science again, as one of the options. Anyway, so I think we'll leave that now, and we'll go to Ross, who's going to give us some. So we're going to space now, then, aren't we, Ross?
We are. Yes.
We're going.
We're not actually going into space. No.
Well, actually, no.
That would be great if we could. But yeah. So this is basically about NASA and a planned mission to go to Europa. So Europa's one of Jupiter's moons, and it's the one that's always been quite interesting in terms of looking for things like signs of life on other planets, this sort of thing, because they are fairly sure that there's a icy surface and water underneath a vast ocean. And they've been planning on sending a probe to Europa sometime in the 2020s. They haven't declared when they're going to do it. But what they have declared this week is the 9 scientific instruments that are going on this probe. So basically, yeah, like I say, that they're looking they're not looking for evidence of life. It's not that. They're looking for evidence of things that might be supportive of life. So they're looking at things like, so in terms of the instruments they've got, there's something called a plasma instrument for magnetic sounding. Now, basically, this is for looking at the actual ice shell. So what they're going to do is use magnetic sounding to sort of like measure magnetism. It's a hard word to say. And see how thick the actual ice shell is, and also check how deep the ocean is and how salty it is as well.
So this is going to be a lander, an actual lander?
No, I think it's a probe. I don't think it's a lander. No, it's just right, these are all sort of remote sensing.
But they've done that before. They put an orbit and a lander around an orbit, haven't they?
Yeah, but they didn't have all of the
right.
They didn't have all the instruments
because of how long ago it was.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they've also got another magnometer for measuring the magnetic field. So again, this will also help. If the oceans, subsurface oceans, really salty, it will produce a magnetic field. There's a mapping image spectrometer, which is again to look for organics and salts. There's an imaging system, which they're basically going to map about 90% of the surface down to, what was it saying, like the smallest size they're going to resolve is about 6 meters, I think, per pixel. So quite a high resolution camera they've got there to map it. They've got a radar, and again, this is for, it's an ice penetrating radar to look through the ice and again, see what's underneath there. One of the more interesting ones they've got is a thermal imaging system. Now, what they see is plumes, like vents. Now, they're not volcanic or anything, but they think that basically it's water jets coming up. So they're going to try and identify these because the water jets, when they come up out of the icy surface, there'll be a difference in heat there. So there's a thermal imaging system that should hopefully be able to identify those.
So that'll pick up the hot spots.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. There's a mass spectrometer, so again, what they're going to do with this is looking at those vents. They'll be able to identify from the particles that come up from the vents. They use a mass spectrometer to look at that and see what the actual material is that's coming up. So that'll give them an idea of, again, what the actual ocean that they think is there is actually made of. And similarly, there's a surface dust analyzer as well, which again is for looking at small particles that are ejected. And effectively, not directly sample it, but sample the surface of Europa.
So they'll get chemical compound analysis.
Exactly, yeah.
So they'll have their own lab on board of this.
Exactly, yeah. Then finally, there's an ultraviolet spectrograph, and again, this is looking at the composition of the actual atmosphere itself around Europa. It's got a very thin atmosphere, so they're going to be looking at that ultraviolet spectrograph and working out again what the material in the atmosphere actually is. So like I say, there's nothing that's directly looking for evidence of life directly, but if they get decent information from all of these, they'll have a good idea of exactly what the structure of the moon is, what it's made of, what the subsurface ocean's made of, and hopefully then see if it is supportive for life, because there has been lots of talk about other, not landers, but sort of like things to go and drill through the ice and then go into the ocean and start swimming around. That's one of the things that they're planning at some point, I think. But this mission should definitely sort of give them a lot of information on what's there, if anything. And if Arthur C. Clarke's to be believed, in 2000 and whatever it was, the sequel to 2001, it'll be life.
So, do we know? There's 3 moons around Jupiter. There's Ganymede, Europa, and is it Io?
I think there's 6, isn't it?
Is it?
There's a lot of moons.
Anyway, well, do we know why Europa is the is sort of like they're tuning in on that one rather than anything else?
Because of the fact that they're fairly certain it's got water on, and a lot of water as well. In terms of how much water they think's there, I'm sure I saw something where it's basically on the level of the amount of water on Earth. I'm sure it's a lot of water.
Europa and Titan have always been the leading candidates, haven't they, for life elsewhere in the solar system?
Yeah.
And do we know what the temperature is on Europa?
Europa temperature, let's have a look.
Oh, yeah, we do, actually. I've got it here. 110 Kelvin, which is minus 160 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Oh, that's a bit chilly.
But this is the thing. They think the surface is ice, but then
underneath you might get bacteria and stuff.
A warm ocean. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this probe will be able to identify that. I mean, they've got pictures of the surface, and you see the lines, and it does look like it's a sort of a moving sort of ice surface. You know, you'll get like effectively tectonic plate type things going on. So I mean, yeah, they're fairly, you know, I don't know whether it's definitive that they've got internal details, but yeah, I think all the observations at the moment so far say that that's what's going on there, and hopefully this will confirm that or deny it.
It's got quite a lot of water as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure it's about. I'm sure I saw something not so long ago where they were saying the amount of water is about the same that's on the surface of the Earth.
Yeah.
Which is quite a lot of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they've had flybys in the 70s. You know, Voyager probes went past and Pioneer probes went past. And what was the last one? New Horizons in 2007 did some imaging of it as well. It flew past. But yeah, I think this is the first probe to actually go specifically to Europa.
The idea of a submersible going around another planet's water is
yeah, idea, that would be brilliant. That, yeah. Because obviously one of the things they'd be looking for if they get in the ocean would be things like, you know, like the volcanic vents you get in our oceans.
Yeah. Which,
you know, a lot of people think that you know, was the source of the original, you know, primordial soup organics and stuff.
Yeah.
And they would definitely want to investigate that if they can find that on another planetary object. But yeah, that would be great.
Well, the thing is, you can look at the characteristics of something and say, well, that looks hostile to life, but there's extremophiles on Earth that live in,
this is
like
true.
vents and the Arctic, and there's all sorts of environments, you know, where it's like 90% salt and yet life. Okay, small life, but life's still often there. So.
And
that's 2020, did you say?
They're saying still names in the 2020s, and I think they've got all of the funding. Basically, there's like 30.
So are they in the design phase, or it's literally just pulling the teams together?
I mean, basically, they've been. I think they've proposed something like 44 different scientific instruments to go, and they've just announced the 9 that they've chosen. So basically now will be, right, design the thing that these 9 instruments are going to clip onto, and then work out when they're going to send it.
So is there optimism for there actually being life there then? Because I guess there's no need to have optimism about does it have the potential to support life, because we already know the answer to that. It's yes, don't we? So.
Well, this is the thing. I think there's optimism that it's the most what's the word or the least hostile candidate within our own solar system, shall we say.
So if it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be there.
Exactly, yeah. And obviously these instruments are going to, like you say, yeah, they're fairly sure it is not hostile to life, but these instruments will clarify exactly how, sort of like, you know, again, it's one of these things where you think if the oceans are measured and they determine they're about the same saltiness as our oceans and about the same temperature, they're going to say, oh, that's even more supportive of life. But like you say, it doesn't necessarily, you know, just because we have life on our planet doesn't necessarily mean it's the perfect type of environment for life. But if it is similar to Earth, you think, well, it feels like it increases the possibility, shall we say?
Yeah. It'll probably tell us something about our own origins in that. If it shares, well, it'll tell us something either way. If it shares an origin with us, then that tells us something important. If it doesn't share an origin with us, that also tells us something important, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. So we're going to follow that up on the episode 10,000 of Wonder of Stuff then.
Yeah. We're still going in the 2010s.
Excellent. Cool. Good stuff. Right, I think what I'll do now is we'll go on to the last bit, which is the something old bit. We'll catch up on a few stories that we've talked about in the past. I'm going to start off with one that we covered in WAS 18, which was a topic on synthetic photosynthesis. If you remember, there was California Institute of Technology were trying to build a solar leaf, and this solar leaf... the whole premise of this, by the way, is trying to artificially do photosynthesis, do what a plant does in a lab, so that they can produce fuel. That's the holy grail. We can produce fuel from the same system that a plant uses, so we don't have to use fossil fuels anymore. That's the holy grail. And back in WAS 18, which was the start of this year, I think it was, California Institute of Technology were doing a solar leaf. Trying to turn the sun into fuel, and if you remember, we talked about how in their system there is a 2-electrode system where you have a non-conductive film in between, because the 2 electrodes, one is producing hydrogen and one is producing oxygen, and I said something about the Hindenburg going bang. And the idea with that, they were splitting the oxygen and the hydrogen of what became the hydrogen was going to be stored in a fuel cell. That was the idea behind that. Well, the new one, which is just came out last month, which is also in California, but it's a different set of scientists. And this is U.S. Department of Environment supported, but it's the University of California at Berkeley. And the way they're doing it is, that was a man-made sort of leaf. The way they're doing it this time is to get the solar to the actual photosynthesis part, is they're using nanotubes, which are not nanotubes, sorry, nanowires, which are obviously very, very small wires, made of silicon and titanium dioxide, and they're laying them out is in what I could best describe as like a radiator format, so going up and down like that. So they've got a nanowire, then a gap, and a nanowire and a gap, so it can hit them. The sun can hit that array, and then what they're doing is, this is the interesting bit about this one. So the capture mechanism is different to the original one, but also the way that they're turning the fuel. What they're trying to do is that they're now the electrons. So the solar rays hit the solar energy hits these arrays, and it splits off electrons, and they're sending the electrons. And this is what I don't fully understand. They're sending electrons to bacteria, and it's the bacteria that are going to generate something that they can mix with water and hence make the fuel energy. So that was the new update on that energy.
Is that a different company doing that? Is it?
Yeah, this one. Although they're both in, because when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, it's the same story, but it's not, because obviously it's a completely different mechanism. But they are both in California. One's one university in California, one's another university in California. I guess there's some sort of rivalry there. Yeah, so the idea is that, like I say, they're going to split the water molecules to make oxygen on one side, and then the chemicals that the bacteria produce that's how they're going to make the energy on the other side. And I guess if they change the bacteria, you get different outcomes.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one. What I'll do is I'll flip through them all, and then we can have a discussion at the end, because we're going to probably run out of time. The second one that we're going to go back on, which is it's so relevant. It's actually happening now. We've talked about this a couple of times. One was on last week, and then a couple of episodes beforehand. We're talking about the Planetary Society's solar sail, which is the one that Carl Sagan put the theory about. This big mylar sail that was going to move around space based on photons hitting it. Now, last week I said, it's dead. It's not working anymore. It went into space, and then there was a glitch in the computer software, and it basically was logging to a bit of RAM. I guess it was RAM, and it filled the RAM, and the operating system keeled over, and that was it's dead. And then Ross came to me on Monday and said, "I've just read something to say that it's working again," and indeed it was. It had just started up again. So basically, here's the little bit of the timeline that happened. They launched it. There was a flaw in the software, which meant that the RAM filled up with logging information, and it keeled over. That was what I reported last week. So what happened was, they reckon that a cosmic ray hit the right bit of the electronic circuit, rebooted the operating system, and this is what you saw on the Monday night, and it's back up, and it started sending telemetry information back to their ground station.
What does it mean a cosmic ray did that? What, it got screened basically, and then it got enough energy from the cosmic ray? Or... Well,
in some way it affected, I guess, the circuitry in some way. I don't know.
That's weird.
It is weird. So Monday night, it was back up and running. It was selling telemetry information. They did manage to upload the software patch, so it wouldn't fill up the log files again. That's fine. Everything was going tickety-boo until Wednesday, or the 3rd, when it went offline again. What they did was they deployed the solar panels. They managed to deploy the solar panels. I think I already said in the original thing that they deployed the sail. They haven't deployed the sail. They deployed the solar panels on Wednesday, and then they found that the batteries were drawing like near to zero current, and it went offline again. Then yesterday it came back online. Obviously, I think the problem is that the way they've got it tilted, you've only got a certain amount of time when it's facing the sun. So if you're not in the right place, then you've got to go around again before you get enough energy and charge the batteries up till everything kicks in again. So now they've got enough energy. The batteries are okay. The batteries are charging. So they decided what they were going to do tonight, and this is what I'm looking at here. I've got my little feed here coming up on here to deploy the actual sail, and they were going to do that at 7 o'clock our time. 7 GMT, 6 GMT, 7 o'clock BST. So what they did was they sent the signal to deploy the motor to get the sail out. Unfortunately, nothing happened.
So try again tomorrow, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, what the situation is that they've only got a very small amount of time because they've got virtually zero money in terms of a space project. Yeah. They've only got one listening station, which is California Polytechnic, I think it is, Polytechnic University. So once it goes out of range of there, they can't listen for telemetry until it comes back around again, and by that time it would be out of their window. So they're going to do it again, I think, tomorrow night. Oh no, saying that, no, hang on. It does say here 49 minutes ago. It says they're going to try again at 20 to 8.
Well, there's one here saying 3:51 EDT,
which is 1942 UTC, which is 2042, which is 20 to 9 our time. So it might be happening now.
Right now.
It might be happening now, so we'll see about that.
They've literally just tweeted 5 minutes until second deployment.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
Oh, should we do something live?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, when this is going on, because it's going on now, what I'll do is I'll pop back to the third item on here, which is you all remember that I've been interested in food technology, food science, and we all remember that way before Christmas and again after Christmas, I gave you some updates about the 4 main movers in the food science world, who are the startup companies who are getting venture capital money from the people who used to support the Silicon Valley companies, and that was Impossible Foods, Hampton Creek, Beyond Meat, and the other one is Modern Meadow. Impossible Foods was the burger. Hampton Creek was the eggless mayonnaise and egg-free egg products. Beyond Meat were the just general meat substitutes for chicken and beef, and the final one, Modern Meadow, was the leather substitute. Now, I'm not going to say much about them now, but there's a load of links that I'm going to put on the show notes to YouTube videos. Watch them if you're interested at all in it, because some of it is really good stuff. You get actual investigation into the lab, so they're actually doing interviews in the lab that all these people are doing it in. The Impossible Foods burger, they tell you about how they're getting the meat flavour out of it, and it's down to something called heme, which is the constituent parts in hemoglobin, which is made up of the blood. And they reckon that about 99% of the flavour of meat comes from this heme. And they can find it in any root of any legume, so any root vegetable. And they did this trial on camera where they show you this, what looks like blood, and somebody tastes it and goes, yeah, it looks like blood. And the guy says, yeah, when I first tasted it, it reminded me of being punched in the face. And it's all from a vegetable. And that's how they're getting the taste. And you know, I think I said the last time that their publicity photo actually looked like it had juices, meat juices. And this is how they're getting that. So there's that. The other thing that I want to tell you desperately before we're running out of time is that the Hampton Creek company are the people who make that Just Mayo, that egg-free mayo, and also other egg-free products. So scrambled eggs, they're making scrambled eggs and omelettes and all sorts of stuff with no eggs in them. They've just had a massive boost in America, because America is just being hit by a huge case of bird flu.
Right.
And they've killed something astronomical, like 40 million chickens or something.
I bet there's conspiracy theories about that already.
Is there?
Is there? Probably.
Oh, I'm not going to talk about them. I'm not going to talk about the conspiracy theories.
Fake egg companies.
But from the point of view of Hampton Creek, there's some big burger chains are switching to their product.
Yeah.
So
that's all it takes for them is someone like a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Wendy's or whoever to say that's what we use, and then it's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true enough. So I'll put some links on the show notes, some links to videos. Very interesting. If you're at all interested, watch these. So is there anything in there that you want to talk about in that little batch of catch-up?
No, I mean, just in terms of the meat thing, yeah, I'm looking forward to when one of these Impossible Burger things actually make it out, because I really would. I'm looking forward to trying one. Well, because I've always been disappointed by any meat alternatives that I've tried in the past.
First off, that one, they reckon by 2016 they'll be out into the product, into the public domain. Yeah. There is a video that I'm going to post, which is on YouTube, which is the Beyond Meat company who do the chicken and the beef replacement products. This is the Tonight Show in America, and they actually have a set of meals on the desk with all of the presenters standing behind them. So they have a proper meat and then the alternative. So the same dish cooked twice. Yeah. And they do one for chili and they do one for I can't, something else. And in each case, they get it wrong.
Yeah.
So you say which is the real one, which is the fake one, and they get it wrong in every time. And there was one presenter in particular who was particularly bullish and was like, yeah, there'll be no problem. I'll be able to find out which one's beef.
Yeah.
And he got it wrong. And it was like, okay.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
interesting. Like I say, I'll pop it up, and we'll show the show notes.
I bet you. Unfortunately, I think people will still find a reason not to do it though, because I know I follow the YouTube or was it Facebook? Anyway, a popular science page on something. Oh, it was Facebook, and they posted about one of these a year or so ago, and people were saying, and bear in mind this was a popular science page. People were saying things like that shouldn't be meddled with, and it's totally unnatural, and it's like, oh, for God's sake. What?
But it isn't totally natural because it's vegetable based.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean,
I'm sure we talked about this last time as well. I'm the only meat eater on this show, but if I had an alternative that tasted like meat, why would I want to eat meat? Why would I want to kill animals?
Absolutely, and
to kill the animals?
And I'm hoping that other people have the wit to go down that route that you said, because you're a fairly educated man. Okay, you can put a logical thought process together. If something tastes and looks like what you normally eat, but it's 90% less water, 90% less resources across the planet, you'd have to be particularly stubborn,
exactly.
And some may say stupid, to go with the other option.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? Commands have been sent to the light sail 3 minutes ago. Is it going to work? How long does it take for them to find out if it's worked?
Usually a couple of minutes.
Right, okay. Well, we might as well stick with it.
Just on the bacteria electricity one, I know that there's two types of bacteria that are already known to science, or there were two have been known for a while, that use electricity directly as their energy source to power them.
How's that
I didn't know that, but that would make a lot of sense.
How does that work in nature? Where do they get electricity from? Or is it just the fact that it's like an piezoelectric effect or something like that?
They do literally eat and excrete electricity.
They're called Sporomusa ovata, and they're anaerobic bacterium that readily accept electrons directly from surrounding environment and use them to reduce carbon dioxide.
That's a different one then, because that's not the name. Geobacter and a different one, but that one that you've named there is not the one that's. So yeah, they have recently discovered. You can stick the way they've been doing the experiments is stick an electrode in the ground and see which species of bacterium come and see it, which is like amazing. But bacteria is one of these. It's a complete genus where, well, not multiple genuses, I guess, but it's it's a complete family of organisms which not a lot is known about them. There's probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of species that are not yet known to science.
Yeah.
And they are, I guess, with the public not as interesting, but scientifically potentially more interesting than any other groups. What they could potentially tell us.
Definitely.
But yeah, stuff like this. I mean, I guess it has ramifications on engineering and technology as well. If you can find a little bit about how the electricity is harvested and used, and who knows what that might do for the energy industry.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, doesn't it? I don't know. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling there's a definite. We're in this period of science where I'm getting excited again.
There's a lot of interesting things going on, isn't there?
Yeah, there's lots of things right across broad spectrum, all sorts of things, and I'm getting really. I just get the idea that, like, what if I was in the Industrial Revolution, there's, you know, I would love to have been in the Industrial Revolution when, you know, electricity was being found and machines were being made and all this sort of thing. I think it would be dead exciting. And for some reason, maybe it's just the wine talking, but I'm feeling that we're in this cusp area of people pushing out again.
Yeah.
I think it has.
I hope so. Anyway,
it has the potential. It's definitely a turning point. I think the publication bias, which I've talked about before, I think is a real threat to it at the moment, and we'll see how that goes, because it is definitely becoming more mainstream, but that in itself is having a negative effect on the science. So it's a delicate balance, because of course promotion of science to the public is critically important, but at the same time, if the feedback loop there is that the science is damaged by that process, then...
Well, that's the thing you've mentioned before. People will have sort of emotional reactions to certain things that evidence shows this, but people don't like it, so it gets sort of, you know, criticised or debunked, discounted, and this sort of thing. Whereas it's like, well,
not just that, but just the, you know, this is popular, so we'll publish this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the scientific studies are being then engineered towards, oh well, don't even bother doing, you know, discontinue the study if we're not going to get a positive result here.
Yeah,
it's that sort of thing. You know, if we're not going to get something that's going to be popular, don't even bother doing the science, which that's a new thing for science. Well, it's the fact that that's so pervasive is a new thing for science, so it's a huge challenge.
Actually, talking about sort of results, science, experiments, and statistical analysis, if you enjoy stuff like that, there's a program on Radio 4 called Less is More. I don't know whether you've ever heard it. It's a mathematical show, but they pick out stories in the media where there's a statistical error. You know, where you've got stories which are like, the headline is 50% of all X are in fact Y. Yeah. And they'll pick it out and they'll go, well, that's just rubbish. Yeah. And they'll tell you all the maths behind it and stuff. Really good show. It'll be on the iPlayer. Less is More. It's on Fridays, 4:30 till 5 o'clock. But it's, like I say, it's on iPlayer. It's a great show, and it's not hideously, you know, mathematical, but the topics they talk about are really, really interesting.
On the light sail, the motor count has incremented, apparently. So does that mean they're turning, I assume?
Yes, that means that the motor is turning, so they're getting the feedback. Every time at one resolution, they'll get telemetry back saying, and the motor is going.
Excellent.
Wow. And there's another new tweet just come in. Motor count continues to rise. That means that means the sails are being deployed.
So it's deploying. Well, there we go. Cutting edge there, reporting there.
So on that bombshell. Hey, great. I do like live science. It's brilliant. Yeah. I think it's probably about time that we wrap this episode up. I know Rob is watching tonight, and I also think Stuart Henderson is also watching tonight. Oh no, it's actually Andrea logged in as Stuart.
Andrea using his account or something.
Yeah, cool. So thanks to Rob and thanks to Andrea for watching live. And same goes as we always say every week. If you're interested in what we're doing, if you think we're talking rubbish, quite possibly we are, tell us. If you think there's something that you want us to discuss in the future, drop us a line to the various communication mechanisms. We've got our Twitter handles, which, as always, they're... Oh, God, I can never get this right. There, somewhere. Anyway, we're also on email, which is wonderstuff@gmail.com, and also on our blog, where we've got the show notes, wonderstuff.blogspot.com show notes. There'll be loads of links on from this evening, certainly from the food stuff. And... and I'm just getting live information back from Rob at the moment. Hello. And so until next time, say goodbye, chaps.
Goodbye, chaps.
Jolly good.